World of Warcraft Classic.
Yeah.
You've been playing
Coming
it?
August. Yeah, the beta. I'm playing the beta. So it is what it is, but like it's level capped at 30, but it is the classic WoW experience.
And you seem to be in the camp of no one's going to want to go back to this, or at least you had no interest in going back to it.
I was not expecting to find it as appealing as I did. That's for sure.
Oh, you're enjoying it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, what about it?
Just like, okay, where to even begin? Let's start with let's start with itemization. So in WoW Classic, when you get a new piece of loot, it actually feels like you've become up to 10 times more powerful than you were off a single piece of gear. In modern WoW, you don't feel that. It's just numbers, really. But in old school WoW, like you get a new sword and all of a sudden you're just shredding stuff that was giving you trouble. Because it's just like, that's how the power levels were. Like you get a dungeon sword and you go back out into the overworld and you start chopping up wolves. There's no scaling on the areas, so you're chopping up garbage wolves to make leather gear for yourself, and it really feels like you're way more powerful, because you are.
Does it feel satisfying, or does it just feel nostalgic?
That part feels satisfying.
Okay.
The power disparity that you get, you actually feel stronger in the world, because again, there's no scaling areas, so you're actually getting markedly stronger with those, with gear and stuff like that. So that element is crazy cool. There's some not good elements we can talk about too, like certainly. Other than that, not nostalgia stuff. Social things are cool right now. That could fade with time, but it actually is really cool to like be walking around a zone, having priests run by and buff you, druids run by and buff you. That's not a thing anymore. Talking to people to form together to do groups, because the zones are designed in a fashion where if like you pull one null, you're gonna get 7. So you might want to group up to do that quest. You'll go way faster. And even if it's just like a high and buy, that's way more interaction than you have normally in regular WoW today.
Is this enticing, Andy?
And then after that, there's the PvP element of like, I said this, ironically, there is more, it feels like there's more meaningful Alliance and Horde interactions here than there are in Battle for Azeroth, which should theoretically be the biggest battle between Horde Alliance ever, right? I know, and it's not all good. You got level 30s camping you and level, I'm going to get sick of that pretty soon. But it's fun to be able to call upon like your guys and their guys and watch them battle it out in the graveyard, It's like a bunch of Alliance and Horde actually fighting. When's the last time I saw that outside of a battleground?
It didn't happen in Azeroth?
I mean, it does, but it's just like, all right, I'm doing like a quest thing, a little like collect 5 egg thing. Somebody will show up, kill you, and leave.
Okay.
And this, it actually gets a big faction war going in the zone. Like,
you learn to hate the other side again.
People are like, you'll start to recognize the same people.
Right.
Which never happens now, because everything's like, you phase out and you'll never see that person again. Here, you're talking to the same people, interacting with the same people on both sides.
That's interesting.
You start to recognize them. It's like, oh, that stupid shaman's back in the graveyard again. He's calling his buddies. Let's get our group out here. And all right, you organize, they organize. Everybody knows each other's names. You start to be like, I ran a dungeon with this guy yesterday. I saw him outside in Stormwind eating a biscuit. I'm going to invite him again because we had a good time. You don't have that experience now when it's just like you queue up for a dungeon, you go through the motions, you do it, and you're done. Now, granted,
beautiful.
Within your guilds, your own communities, it's a different interaction, but it's interesting to talk to randoms again.
The global community has definitely been lost in the modern game.
Right.
Instancing everything.
Mm-hmm.
You don't even, you can be in the same city and not see your friends.
Exactly right.
Right, in the modern game. Because they tried to scale it and make it very accessible. Right.
And they have.
And so that's why when he talks about in the modern game, if you go to a zone, like if you're level 112, everything's level 112. Right, so that it's easy for you to do. And this is scaling they did to kind of fix like old leveling to some degree. But in the original game, you'd be like, oh, I'm 112. What's over here? Oh my God! Like these are 120, and they just like own you. And then you're like, oh man, I gotta get my stuff back. And like it just kind of creates those environments. Or you find, like you said, you find a friend, you're like, I want to go in there where the 120s are. I got a quest. Let's go in there. Let's kill them together. Let's do that.
I'm going to have to find some people to do this with. I'm going to have to talk to somebody.
Yeah, or you'll just even like, you'll find 5 other people who are standing in front of that thing going like, I can't get in there. And like, well, should we get together and go in there? I mean, it's just, that's the experience that the old game had because the challenges were built in, right? Like they were static.
It was, it's just so bizarre even looking at the old design of like Dead Mines, which I have a lot of nostalgia for, the old Dead Mines. Going back through it, and a lot of that nostalgia was pretty unwarranted. The encounters are not nearly as interesting as I remember them. They're literally all just put the tank in front and DPS everything down. There's no mechanics to speak of that are interesting.
Sure.
So that was, and there's so much more trash that I remember. It's like, oh my god, there's just pull after pull of just goblins and bandits and goblins and bandits. So many of them. Like you're in there for a while. The dungeons are much longer, and of course, if your tank leaves in one of those dungeons, you're kind of screwed. There's no dungeon fighter to pick up another one. You might get lucky. You might get another one. Who knows? Most might have the warlock pet tank the rest of the dungeon. Who knows? You got to get scrappy.
There's something magical about going back, though.
But yeah, some of the like just getting down into dead mines. You don't queue up for it. Just getting down there was actually
there. Yeah,
you gotta get your group outside because like the whole thing is set up like an old school overworld EverQuest dungeon where there's like different mini bosses in different areas. Nobody ever goes to these areas. I didn't even know how these people existed anymore. It's like there's a named enemy down there in the undead pit of dead mine. What is this? I don't even. Whoa, like that was very interesting. So from a nostalgia standpoint, it was really interesting going back and doing that again. But I think dungeon design has definitely come a long way. And I think that's going to hold true for a lot of the vanilla encounters, that they're simply not as mechanically or feature-wise challenging or interesting. They're gear checks, they're resist checks of putting your tank in front and having your DPS do their job hard. That's all it is.
And so many people know so much more now than they
yeah.
did back then. Like I remember when I played WoW when it came out, I remember like being in dungeons and like looking at people and going like, assist the tank. You go like, what?
I'm like, how do I do that?
And you're like, assist the tank. We all want to kill one target. One target? You know what I mean? Like it was, that was
clicking the buttons, man. Yeah.
That was the conversation
Today's,
where now everyone knows like, don't stand in fire. Like I mean, like all these things that were like at that time made Ragnaros very hard to defeat. Now are very simple.
Those fights are going to be super easy for today's MMO and gamer crowd.
What I'm trying to figure out is, does it feel a little bit like StarCraft Remastered, which I was very excited to see and play, and then I played about 3 games, and like, I'm good. I remember what that game's like.
I mean, I was like, I'll play it for like 10 levels and see what happens, but then I got into it, and I'm almost at the current cap, and I'm loving the faction wars, and
so it's more the novelty.
crafting my own gear. I really love the feeling of that. It's good. It appeals to that aspect of like, I'm living out in a shack in the woods, farming my own food, and I don't need anybody. I'm just hanging out here. But if I
WarCraft Rust.
Yeah, it's got that element to it where like I get excited. I'm like, oh god, yeah, I can craft some green bracers. and like today, it's just like I log on. It's like, okay, I got an epic new weapon. It's like a million more DPS. It's just a couple more numbers when I hit something. It just doesn't feel as epic as those for that reason, because the power levels just aren't. They don't give you that kind of thing. It just feels like it's more rugged and rustic and yeah, it's not. It's certainly far from perfect, but it's just so fun and interesting to play something like that doesn't have the same kind of convenience and rules. Yeah. Like as a rogue, it's super. I gotta craft my own poisons. I have to make inventory space for those poisons. They only have 40 charges, so every time a poison triggers, one of those charges is consumed, and they only last 30 minutes. So I have to carry around a basic, an alchemy lab with me to whatever I want to do.
And warlocks have to go fill up their bags full of shards.
Soul stones.
And like,
God,
I mean, there's a bunch of stuff, and all the classes are not very balanced very well.
And I think
Old
that's
talent trees. Like,
that works in its benefit, actually. That the classes are not balanced. The classes are different, whereas in current WoW, we've been pushing back for years actually against homogenization of the classes, where any DPS is as good as another DPS, any tank's as good as any other tank, any healer is as good as any healer. So just having that flavor that other classes actually do different things is super interesting. Like, oh, we got a priest, we get this cool buff, or, that doesn't exist in the same form anymore, although they've been pushing back against that after they went hard into it. I don't know, was it Panda or Cataclysm? Which I don't know which expansion it was, but they went, at a certain point, they were like, we don't want everybody to be, discriminated against in a group, so we'll just have everybody be able to do everything.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, got it. It's the Final Fantasy 6 to Final Fantasy 7 change with materia. So can you import your character like backward? No. Okay.
No
so it's just
way.
starting completely fresh.
So if you don't know about vanilla WoW, leveling in vanilla World of Warcraft is, you could go a whole day and not even get a level. Yeah. It's very possible, depending on how you do things. Sure, efficiency experts are going to min-max that whole experience in the grind, but it is a serious challenge to go from 1 to 60 and getting your mount and all these other things.
And it's like, I've got friends playing it as well, and they're like, I got a gold! I'm up to a gold!
You feel like a very rich... You can't even buy your skills when you level up. Like in current WoW, you just get your skills when you level. Yeah. But in this, you have to go to your trainer. You have to purchase skills, so you have to make monetary decisions about what abilities you're going to get, because they're expensive.
That's fun. Do you have time for this, Andy? Do you have time for this in your life? You're going to go back and play?
Oh, for Classic?
Yeah.
I played at some at the event I was at. We had level 40 characters and we were running around, and it's like, oh, I need to go do that. And I start the walk, right? To like get to the content I wanted to get to. And it's funny because I'd start walking and get most of the way there and they'd be like, okay, your next thing you got to do is up. And I'd be like, all right, well, I just like leveled up. So I just walked around most of the day, to tell you the truth.
And here's another thing. That old school quest design,
Yeah.
it is so much worse than anything today. Like, you get quests where it's like, walk there, then walk back, then walk somewhere else. Like, you can spend a whole hour just like ferrying a crate. And that doesn't feel good.
And they're also not like, they're not, the spawns aren't on any kind of like,
Right.
Like they have a spawn timer.
And so,
They spawn after they've been dead after a certain amount of time. Where like in the modern game, there's like, oh, there's 5 people in the area killing these guys. They're dying at this rate. Spawn them at this rate, right? So that there's
so
more
that everyone
things
can
than-
get their stuff. And this
Gotcha.
one, like, you could be waiting around. Like, we had to form a queue. There's this thing called the Defias Messenger that you need to kill for a quest that triggers the dungeon quest. Everybody wants it because you get a blue piece of gear at the end, and it's like probably your first blue, and it's really, really big. So you got to kill this guy to get his letter or whatever, and like he spawns in a certain place in this town. We had like 7 people just lined up.
There's screenshots like on the Reddit of
That's
like 20 people all lined up, like waiting in line, like,
Yep.
hope
Yep.
we
Oh,
get
my
through
turn's
here
up.
soon.
Good old
Yeah.
days are back again. Here we go.
So there's plenty of stuff that isn't great.
Yeah.
But it's just it's
But people
so
are enjoying that,
fascinating.
by the
Yeah.
way. People are enjoying the stupid lines and the waiting. I think it is the antithesis of what the current game has, and I think people are reveling in the challenge, reveling in the like sense of accomplishment. You know,
Sure.
like right now, I mean, if you want to do a profession, I mean,
Why bother?
go to the AAH, buy a bunch of these things, spam this button, you're done.
Yeah.
Right? Like it's the professions now are, which is amazing because they have all these like profession leads that say they're going to make them better than they've ever been.
And they've been saying that for like
and it's been
5
like this.
years.
They're literally the professions have been like this.
And they've been worthless.
on just
Not
this
not the leads, the professions.
the professions, yeah. But so like the professions have been just like bad, right? Except for like 1 or 2. But in this game, like if you take the time and you want to spend the time to spend the weekend
And it's time. Let me
Right.
tell you, professions are
To-
no joke.
to build this one thing you want to build, and you got to travel all these places and buy things that like flux, that in the modern game you'd be like, oh, I need 700 of those, no big deal. In this case you go, I need more gold. I need a gold. You know what I mean? To buy these.
Yeah.
And so it's a different experience. So there's a certain like excitement in making those things,
totally.
even though they're not as good. It's just the effort.
Yeah.
The getting there is more fun.
I think like I said, I think the end game is not going to impress, especially since it will never change or advance ostensibly because it's already solved and done. But the journey itself is something else. Like it's just
I love
it's
that.
so
That's so
crazy to
fun.
be like having to consider how I'm going to pull a group of enemies. Like today, if you see a bunch of green enemies, it's just like they're gone. They're toast. You're going to annihilate them.
Right.
But back then, like if you even get one more ad, it's like, oh God, I got to hit all my cooldowns in the right order, or I'm going to die. If you get 2, well, you better have a gameplay because you're dead. You're just dead.
Good times coming out in August.
Yeah.
How much does it cost? How does it work?
It's you get it with your regular WoW sub. So there's
Really?
yeah.
yeah,
That's
it's just-
smart.
So a lot of people are going to play it. It brings up some interesting things in that, like, I feel like the future of this is probably that we're going to get, like, as soon as you start to kind of like wean off like whatever the current WoW thing is, they're going to be like, oh, Burning Crusade. You know what I
Do
mean?
you think they'll really do that?
I think so. Yeah.
It would be smart, but
that's
they
gonna be
can't.
nuts.
They won't change it. I think that they said somewhere else that like the classic server will say this classic server. It'll be a Burning Crusade server, and you may have the option to move your guy over, maybe. But like they'll keep classic.
And then we can all live in the past forever. This is amazing.
Well, I think,
we
you know,
never have to
a lot of
grow old
people-
at all.
By the way, in the modern game, when you sit in a group and you start talking to each other, someone will say, "This is my favorite expansion." Then someone will say, "This is their favorite expansion." Right?
Yeah.
Like it's a classic conversation.
And
Yeah.
by the way, those 2 expansions are always going to be the Burning Crusade of Wrath of Lich King. I don't think anybody's ever picked another
But now
one
you have
over
to
those.
choose which one to live in
No,
forever.
more and more people these days are picking Pandaria. Actually,
Pandaria is like I think Pandaria was underappreciated, and I think a lot of people do really like that one. I've started to come around on it too, but nowhere in comparison to the.
I thought it was
two
interesting
ancient
when we were
ones.
visiting Blizzard how the artist said that Pandaria was the peak of Warcraft art in their mind. Like for the Warcraft
Yeah.
3 Reforged designs, they went back and looked at the art for Pandaria because like it was still
They were looking at that
kind of-
cinematic.
Yeah, because it was
explicitly.
still a little abstract and chunky and old Warcraft while still looking realistic enough. It's like that perfect balancing point, they said, which is interesting. That was just a clip from a larger show called The Game Informer Show. You can find it on iTunes, Google Play, or GameInformer.com. We take the fun opportunities and exclusive information from Game Informer magazine and boil it into a show that airs every Thursday with exclusive cover story information, developer interviews, a lot of fun stuff. So come love games with us.